Hey now, ready to cut through the noise, Adam?
I am. I hate noise.
Yes. So there's a new story that just came out today. Advocates, lawmakers link non-binary Oklahoma teen's death to anti-LGBTQ legislation and rhetoric.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've seen a lot
Okay.
of people talking about this, so I'm anxious to
Yes.
find out what's going on.
So there was a very tragic story that happened recently. Okay. This is a Hill article. It's talking about this. An Oklahoma high school student who identified as non-binary died very recently, and this is a very weird story. Okay, so let me give you the breakdown of what happened here. This was a student who was got in a fight in a student bathroom. Okay, or rather, they're saying that they were like being attacked. They were being bullied by some other students in the bathroom. The fight supposedly only went on for a few minutes. The parents are called to the school. The children who were engaged in this, including the person who died, are looked over at the nurse, and they say, okay, like, you should go to the hospital, you should go see a doctor. The parents take this girl, the non-binary student, okay, to the hospital. They check her out. They say, okay, they send her home. The next day, she collapses and dies.
Scary.
Okay, very scary thing, very bizarre situation. But here's what's kind of part of why this story is very annoying to me when we're trying to like get to the bottom of it is they don't know. And the article even says nobody knows what's going like why this non-binary person student even died. The results of the autopsy and toxicology have not been reported yet. And it seems weird that this fight would necessarily, now it could be, but it seems weird that this fight that they had in this bathroom would be what caused the student to die when two different medical people looked over her and presumably said that she was okay to return home.
Right. Do they
And
suspect drugs were involved? Is that where
they
this is
don't
going?
know.
Okay.
They don't know because we don't have a toxicology yet. There's like so this is why this is so annoying. There's so little information about this. Okay, all you know is there was a non-binary student who was 16. They were being bullied or in a physical altercation in the girls' bathroom. That's all the article says. And then two medical people looked over them, both at the school, both at a hospital, and then they got home, and then the next day they died. And that's all we know. They say, okay, well, maybe we as Americans, as individuals, should sit here and kind of wait for more information to come in before we try to use this child's death for political purposes, right? But no, of course not. We have to immediately jump and say, you know whose fault this is? This is the Republicans' fault somehow. And this is why this is so crazy. So, number one, we don't even know if it's this physical altercation that caused this kid to die. But even if we just assume that that's the case, okay, this article and the people talking about it are kind of even more crazy because what they're saying is that because in the state of Oklahoma, they passed some of these bills that were banning gender affirming care for minors and adopting, it says adopting narrow definitions of male and female and things of that nature. They're saying, well, because the legislature signed these laws and the governor passed these executive orders, that is why high school students are bullying non-binary children at school.
Yeah, I that's a little sus. I mean, I think kids like bullying's been around for centuries, obviously, and people always look for reasons to bully. What is do we know if this is a biological male that was in the girls' restroom?
Um,
That
we don't
seems
know, I guess.
that
We don't
seems like a
know.
relevant piece of information here.
Right. I am guessing that
Just
it's
from a
like
human perspective,
right.
I think that from the left wing perspective, which obviously I'm assuming the Hill here is taking the left wing perspective. If they're blaming the Republicans for this, I don't see how legislation is responsible for this bullying situation. But maybe they left that out because they're saying they want to abolish a gender binary, and understanding the details of the situation as it pertains to biological sex is
Hmm.
completely irrelevant to the story.
Well, it is weird too. I'm guessing that they were a girl because they were in the girls' bathroom. Because, well, how does that even work? Like, if you're 16 and you say, okay, I'm non-binary,
Yeah, which bathroom? Is it just, pick and choose? Either
right?
one, whichever's
Yeah,
available?
what if you're born male, okay, and then you say I'm non-binary? Does that mean that you just get to decide to use the girls' bathroom just because you decide you're non-binary? Like, how does that work? That seems crazy.
Yeah, that seems like a relevant piece of information here that's been carefully edited out of the story. So maybe it is irrelevant. Maybe this non-binary person is a biological female and was in the female bathroom
Yeah, I don't
with
know.
other females and they got in a fight.
Who knows? But and we'll find out when we get more information about why exactly this person even died and how they even died. But it's crazy to me that there is this push now. Like people are so desperate to politicize this situation that they're going to make this insane idea, this completely insane concept, where they're blaming not only the Republican legislature, but they're also blaming libs of TikTok, saying that somehow because libs of TikTok is controversial, that's what like leads to this girl being bullied. As if, okay, how detached from reality is it that these people actually think, or rather that they're making the argument that people would buy, a completely BS argument, that 16-year-old children in high school are paying attention to what legislatures and their local government are doing. And they're like, oh, when we had I didn't feel like I was going to bully this, non-binary child, student classmate of mine. But then when I saw that the legislature in Tennessee, those really cool adults that I really look up to and respect and watch on TikTok, those super cool, boomer legislatures, when they passed that bill restricting gender affirming care for minors, now I'm like, oh, now I get to bully the trans kids. Yeah. Like that's such a fucking real like fantasy of what goes on in school.
Yeah, it's all just political machinations.
Yeah, it's just it's so dumb. James Lindsay called this what do you call it? Trans George Floyd.
Yes, James
Operation
Lindsay.
Trans Floyd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
He's
seems
been
a little out there to me, to be honest with you.
yes. He's been talking about this for a long time that he thinks that there's going to be a intentional push to create a George Floyd moment for trans kids. I I'm skeptical of that. I'm skeptical that this will turn into that, but I guess we'll find out.
Right. So this is just basically a political football because it's election season. The
Yeah.
I did see a lot of the conservative accounts on Twitter saying nothing in this story was correct, nothing in the story was true, but it seems like that's incorrect, right?
Well, I don't know because it could turn out that the reporting is just all wrong.
Yeah, see
Like
that's I kept looking for community notes on Twitter and
mhm.
really didn't see any community notes about how any details of the story were untrue. And the chat is saying that this is actually a biological female, so
That's what
I think
I
we just need
assume,
to
right?
get rid of gender. Look, I'm a gender abolitionist now. I think we should just refer to
Just
people as male or female
uh-huh.
and be done with it. It's such a
There you go.
headache. Yeah.
Well, it's weird because and also we don't even know the full information about the fight because some of the articles call it a physical altercation, which that could mean anything from someone punching you in the face to like pushing you.
Yeah.
Some,
Girls fighting in
say
high school, unheard of.
right. Some call it a fight. The girl's mom, or I'm sorry, the girl's biological grandmother and guardian said that she was badly beaten. But what does that mean exactly? Like, there's so many parts of the story that are still up in the air that we don't know any of this information about. So
Yeah, and I mean, who knows if she did drugs 2 days later and it was completely unrelated to the fight.
yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
She could have maybe. Yeah, we don't know if it was completely unrelated. We don't know if she sustained some head injury in the fight that caused a brain bleed that everyone missed and she died. Later. Who we don't know. But
Okay.
so I guess we'll find out. In the coming days, what's going on here. If it turns out something else, you'll see the story will quietly disappear. If it turns out that she did die because of the physical altercation, because of the fight, I'm sure you'll see this is trumpeted as why, lose a TikTok and the Republicans are so evil with their horrible, horrible, bigoted bills that are preventing children from, transitioning and potentially destroying their bodies.
I also did see a bunch of people, and I believe it was over this story, were sending death threats to the Libs of TikTok account manager.
Hmm.
What's her name? Raycheck or something?
Right, check, yeah.
Yeah. And she was asking her fans to identify them, and a bunch of them were getting doxxed and whining and crying. She was like posting the death threats from her DMs and whatnot. So she was going full nuclear on these people.
Hmm.
Yeah. Which, look, I don't condone doxing or anything like that, but
Right.
it does seem a little karmic to me, right? Like, why are you sending death threats to people on the internet, you dumbasses?
Yep.
Yeah.
Terrible. Okay. Lucy Lundberg, thanks so much for the 5 gifted memberships.
Welcome, new members.
Thank you.
What's up?
And Short Stack Goblin, thank you for the $2. Says stand on the body while they them is still warm. True.
Oh, that's a
That's
good,
unfortunately what's going on here. Yeah.
excellent point. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is kind of a tragedy, right? I mean,
Of course, a child died. I mean,
16-year-old girl
yeah.
gone
Okay.
under
What's the next
suspicious
story?
circumstances. Biden holds a 4-point lead over Trump in Quinnipiac poll.
Yeah, this is an interesting story because we all have to be careful not to get isolated into our news silos. This is what leads people down the pathway of their brain melting when they get an outcome they don't expect or like. We saw this when the news was all saying that Donald Trump couldn't possibly win, and then he does, and people's brain melts because they were kind of in this news silo. And then it was kind of the same thing for some people on the right who were very big Trump supporters when Trump lost in 2020. So right now, at least from the news silo that I've been consuming more of recently, I've been fed information that says that Donald Trump 100% is like going to annihilate Joe Biden. Joe Biden's getting annihilated in the polls. So I've been just seeing that nonstop and from multiple sources, by the way. It's not just like from sus sources. So I was very surprised to find that there was another poll, at least one poll from Quinnipiac, that showed Biden was actually beating Trump, which is interesting. So here's this poll from that says that on Wednesday, 49% of registered voters said that they support Biden compared to 45% who would choose Trump. Okay.
Right.
Which is very interesting.
My
And
news
it said,
silo is exactly the same as yours, by the way, obviously. So,
yes, yes. Now again, I don't know if this poll is more accurate or not than other polls, but you have to get a bunch of different sources to try to make a determination about what's actually going on here in the world. There are some other interesting questions here. This was a poll that was asked of 1,400 self-identified registered voters. Okay, so there's some other interesting parts of the poll. They said 93% of Democrats said they support Biden. That should be obvious. 91% of Republicans said they support Trump. That should be obvious. Though that shows that the polling obviously means that there's probably a little bit more Democrats responding than Republicans. Um, it said, though, despite the fact that Biden was winning in this poll, it said that 67% of voters think Biden is too old to serve another 4 years effectively, while only 57%, well, not only, but 57% think Trump isn't too old for another term. So even though more people support Biden, more people still think he is too old to be president, which is not good news for him. Um, Only 35% of voters in the survey said they thought Biden has the physical fitness to serve another term, and only 34% thought he had the mental fitness to serve another term. Jeez. This is like, you don't want to be in the situation. 35, even though the majority of people that answer the poll still said that they would support Biden. This, like, the majority of them still thought he doesn't have the physical fitness to be president or even the mental fitness to be president. Like, what's going, like, this is wild. This is wild to me. This is why I think that if it was anyone but Trump, I think they would have a huge, I don't think Biden would stand a chance if it was basically anyone else that wasn't Trump.
yeah, we'll see what happens.
There was an interesting thing kind of related to this I saw from uh, Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC. And he had this whole segment that was all like, it was like 25 minutes of him arguing why the Democrats shouldn't dump Joe Biden and let Joe Biden be president. And like he goes the whole gambit of like comparing him to FDR and talking about how FDR was sick and dying and he still made all these amazing decisions when he
Wow.
was president and all this other stuff. And it's kind of silly just to compare like FDR to Joe Biden, very different people, very different like health concerns, very different ages, completely different situation. He's going on and on and on. But he made one point in all, oh, and he had this like ridiculous metaphor where he's like, listen, when you're flying the airplane,
Oh
okay,
no.
and the airplane is having technical problems, you don't substitute the flight mid-flight because he's too old for someone who's never flown an airplane before. Okay. Gavin Newsom's never been president. He's never flown the airplane
Wow.
before. Just like this is so
He
ridiculous.
he threw out Gavin Newsom. Wow.
Yes. Yes. I was like,
I
oh
was
my
gonna
God.
say, is he? I mean, isn't he running against Trump? Trump has been president before, so
There you go. Listen, you gotta obviously Trump
look,
has
you've
to
got a
defeat Gavin
seasoned
Newsom.
pilot right there.
Right there you go. It's a great point. It's a great point. Excuse me. But so he kind of goes on for 25 minutes. It's mostly like just him simping for Biden.
This
It's
is
like a
Lawrence
very gross way.
O'Donnell,
Yeah, this is Lawrence
MSNBC.
O'Donnell on
Okay.
MSNBC. And it was funny because like he was trying to sort of, he's kind of friendly with Ezra Klein. Ezra Klein's on MSNBC sometimes. So he's all like, "Oh, Ezra's like really smart and everything, but he's wrong." So, but he made one point that when he first makes the point, I thought, "Oh, that's actually a really good point I hadn't considered." And he kind of talks about this point for 10 minutes. And then he spends 20 seconds explaining why the entire good point he made for 10 minutes is actually a stupid point. That's completely a waste of time. And that's why no one's talking about it.
That's not a good move.
No, no, no. It's very ridiculous. So the point at first, I'm like, oh, that's a good point. Was he was saying no one is talking about how even okay. So the way that campaign funding works is that Joe Biden has like raised a bunch of money to run for president that he can use for campaign ads and things of that nature.
But he
And
can gift that to anyone in the Democratic Party.
no, he can't.
He can't
He can't
get.
just give it to someone. No. Well, according to Lawrence Donald. Lawrence Donald says he can't just give it to someone. And that's what he
Really?
was saying is the problem. So if Newsom becomes the presidential candidate, Joe Biden legally can't just say, here's all the millions of dollars I've raised and just give it to Gavin Newsom.
Wow. Okay, that's a problem. That's a big problem. I thought that they can't spend campaign donations. They do find ways to get it into their bank accounts, but I thought that they could just gift it to the Democratic or Republican Party or
Well, okay. You're jumping ahead here. Okay. But so he spends 10 minutes explaining that you just can't give it to Gavin Newsom, and Gavin Newsom hasn't raised any money to run for president. And he says
Mhm.
the only person who's legally on this, who legally has access to that money if Biden drops out, is
The
Kamala
DNC.
Harris,
Oh, really?
because it's to
Wow.
the Biden Harris campaign.
Wow. So can
Okay.
Harris give it to the DNC?
Okay. So you're smart. So you know how this works. So you're
Yeah,
already
of
seeing
course.
the end here.
Look, we
Okay.
we looked into this on Trump because we were
Yes.
like, can Trump just take all of this money? Like, what happens to all this money if he just drops out?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Um, so he spends 10 minutes talking about how no one could get the money except for
That's
Kamala.
so he's basically creating a problem that doesn't exist just to
Yes,
simp for Biden.
100%. That's what he's doing.
That's
Yes.
horrible.
Yes.
All
And
these
and then
Democrats are probably falling for that nonsense. Lawrence O'Donnell is on MSNBC.
yep. And this is his opening segment.
Wow.
This is his opening 25-minute segment.
Wow.
And so,
He's lying his ass off.
but see, but this is what they do. So he spends 10 minutes kind of imparting this idea in his audience's head, and then he tells them the truth in like 20 seconds at the end,
And they don't get
hoping
it.
that it kind of goes over their heads. Because then at the last 20 seconds, he does say that yes, it's true that the that Joe Biden can't give the money directly to Gavin
A
Newsom, but he
candidate.
can give it to the DNC, and
And the
then the DNC
DNC.
would presumably spend it on whatever candidate gets a nomination, right?
That's the way it always works. All these Congress people, they have them on the phone dialing for dollars all day. For dollars that go into the DNC coffers.
Yes.
They're like, pony up.
Yes. So I
Yeah.
just and it was like it was just such an insane segment to me because he keeps saying like when someone tells you to replace Biden and they don't tell you what happens to the money, that person is not a serious commentator. And you tell them they don't know what they're talking about. Like he's going on and on and on and on about this thing. Like, this is the golden bullet. This is the reason why you can't replace Biden. And then at the very end, he's like, but it doesn't really matter because then they just give it to the DNC and the DNC gives it to whoever. That's like, what the fuck? Lawrence, what are you such a hack?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Terrible.
I did this Twitter poll. I don't know if you saw it, where it said, which one of these scenarios is more likely to negatively impact America post election? Which is worse? Republicans believe Trump will win the election and Trump loses, or Democrats believe Biden will win the election and Biden loses, like a Hillary 2.0. So it's an unexpected loss, right? An unexpected Trump loss or an unexpected Biden loss. When you were talking about the information silos and these polls and whatnot, I was thinking, is it possible that we can get the absolute worst of both possible worlds where it is literally an unexpected Trump loss and I guess it can't be, obviously, because one of them wins, right?
Well, I mean, I guess I thought you were gonna say like
Yes.
because Biden has to turns over the reins to someone else, right?
Right, right,
But that would
right.
be, I mean, I feel like it's expected at this point.
So which do you think is worse? Obviously, the unexpected Trump loss came out on top in the poll. Well, not obviously, it's actually neck and neck.
Mm-hmm.
Unexpected Biden loss is at 45%, and unexpected Trump loss is at 55%. And that's like, which scenario would be worse for the country? Which supporters would be more likely to cause chaos? The fact that it's so neck and neck is a little bit uh it's it's interesting. I can't tell if it's basically just, people voting for the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
That
a
might be some of it. It's hard to say because the it will cause problems in very different ways. So
Mhm.
like if it's an unexpected Trump loss that causes problems in that it further galvanizes the entire like half the country and Republicans to think that all the elections are rigged essentially and a scam and have no faith in our institutions and want to continue to destroy like all the American institutions essentially and tap out of, being part of this system really at all. But I think
this
that will manifest primarily not through like legislative action. Does that make sense? It's going to kind of just be like the attitude in which the Republican Party adopts going forward and how that
right.
affects the world. Where if there's an unexpected Biden loss, there's not going to, I don't think the narrative is going to be that the election was like, quote, rigged. I think the narrative will be that America is a super duper ultra racist country. Besides the fact that people will say Biden is just super old and, it's his fault for losing. But there will be a lot of people say America is a super duper racist country and it's awful. And I think that the harm that will cause will be more on an institutional level where the institutions will start to, I think, ratchet up the wokeness again. I think the mainstream media will ratchet up the wokeness again and will kind of go, will kind of revert back to maybe 2016, 2020 levels of like horrible leftist crap, dominating the American culture again.
Right, it'll be the country was far more white supremacist than we anticipated. That's going to be
Right.
the narrative.
Yeah.
I the thing that what I was zeroing in on with the media is, in this election cycle, I wonder if we could get in a situation where both sides are pressing that their side is going to win. So if you've got left wing media basically saying Biden is up, Biden is going to win, and you have right wing media saying Trump, Trump, Trump is going to win, then you're in an unexpected loss situation, either way.
Yes.
Like, if you have the media overwhelmingly saying, the polls are in Trump's favor, it looks like Trump is going to win, and Trump wins, it's not an unexpected loss.
It, I think it's more, say, if Biden doesn't drop out, I think it's more likely that it would be like the right wing media is going to say Trump is not going to win, like not is going to win, and he can't possibly lose against Biden.
Right.
And the
That's the
left,
direction it's going. Yeah.
right, and the left wing media will be more like timid about it because like maybe Biden's going to win, like it's going to be rough. So that scenario is far more likely if Biden doesn't drop out, that would be the situation.
Right. Well, you mean if Biden does drop out and
No,
it's
if
a
Biden
different
doesn't drop
candidate,
out, if he does drop out, I I don't
then
think it'll
it's
necessarily be an unexpected Trump loss potentially.
right. Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me read some supers here. JMac, our surrogate father, thank you so much, Daddy JMac, for 50 gifted memberships.
Yeah,
There
that's
you go.
great.
Thank you
Welcome new
so much.
members.
Thank you.
We're also talking to JMac in a little bit here. I guess we're going to talk about the secular arguments in favor of pro-life,
Right.
which should be
True.
great. People have been beating us up in the comments about secular versus religious. Some people think that we are taking secular arguments in favor of pro-life and turning them into religious arguments, such.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just because we talk about the religious arguments. I mean, we can separate the two, obviously. So,
Right. Um, Ma'am8566 for $2 says, "What's the situation?" There you go, Adam. That could be our new tagline.
that's a real fan right there that knows Sitch is short for situation.
True. True.
Unless they're just saying that.
No, they know. They're a true fan. They're a true S-class baby. Okay. That'll be the new tagline. Hey now, Adam, ready for the or hey now, Adam, don't you want to know what the situation is today?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Margin for $5 says, "Hey Pumpkin, so what happened to that Kansas City thing? Did they lose interest because it was three? I'm not going to say that, even though that word doesn't mean what people think it is. Even though it was three black people, so no need for a national talk." I mean, that seems to be essentially what happened. There was, the story I'm sure you know about, where there was a shooting at a Kansas City parade that seemed to be some individuals. Three people were in a fight. It wasn't like they weren't just shooting a bunch of random people to shoot them. They got into some sort of altercation, which led to gunfire. And obviously, it's a very crowded parade, so a bunch of innocent people end up getting shot. And there was a clip that went viral very accurately where Ann Coulter said what basically everyone in our space has been saying for a long time, which is, when the shooting first occurred, even though it seemed like they had arrested or knew who the suspects were, they didn't release any information about them. And Coulter predicted that, well, that must mean that the shooting suspects are not white, because if they were white males, they would have immediately told us who they were, or they would have described them. And Bill Maher seemed skeptical of that, and it turned out, of course, that Ann Coulter was completely correct, because the shooting suspects, or the people that are arrested for the shooting, were black. So, and it was some
How's
altercation that they had between the two, between the three of them. And now the media doesn't seem to care. I mean, the right wing media cares, but the more left wing media doesn't seem to care so much about the story anymore. So
Bill Maher is usually pretty on it though. How is he not? Is he not wise to that?
yeah, that's a good point. He is usually, I guess, this will be part of his learning process. This will be part of his learning process. So
Part of the
that's
red pill
interesting. So
taking.
I pulled up. There's a New York Times story about this from the other day. It says the Kansas City Super Bowl parade shooting, what we know. And you want to know what's totally insane about this? So this is actually
I
this is
definitely do.
oh my God, this is insane. I'm actually glad you asked this question, Maj, because I didn't know this until just this very second. So New York Times, one of the largest publications in America. Okay, you click the story about the Kansas City Super Bowl parade shooting. It does not, in this article, have pictures of the people that did the shooting.
Of course not. But I've seen the pictures. I know what they look like.
I know what they look like too. But isn't that insane?
Yeah.
This is only because they're black. If they were white shooters, there's no way that they would not have plastered the photos of the shooters, which you see whenever there's a shooting, you plaster the image of the shooter in the article. They're not here whatsoever. And it says it says they has their names. The two residents were charged with murder in the shooting. It has them. Boom. Here you go. It has their names, but it doesn't have their pictures. That's very bizarre. That's super weird.
Yeah.
That's pretty gross.
You don't want to create wrongful stereotypes, Sitch.
And I'm fine with that. There are literally Twitter accounts. Okay. All they do
I
every day
know.
is put images and stories of Black people committing crime in order to cultivate negative stereotypes about Black people. That's
Yep.
so I get it, but the New York Times doesn't do that. It's just a normal news outlet for a normal news story. And this does the opposite. This makes everyone like realize that these papers are just so horribly bigoted and racist.
Yeah, it's a
Because
tough line to walk, though.
yeah, but if this is going to be their mode, listen, I'd be more okay with this of them saying like we're not going to talk about the race of the perpetrators. We're not going to show their pictures because we don't want to, kind of give accolades, right? To not accolades, but we don't, some people do these
We don't want to
attacks.
endorse
Obviously,
negative stereotypes of Black people being criminals that shoot up parades.
sure, or whatever. You know, I'd be a little bit more on board with that if it was like a universal rule
Yeah.
where they're like, okay, well, we're not going to just plaster whenever it's a white shooter. We're not going to be like, boom, here's the pictures. They're a white guy with a white guy did this, white guy did this, right? But we know that that's not at least how they're operating right now. They still, if it's a white person that committed a crime, they say a white man did X, Y,
Yeah.
Z.
White supremacy is on the rise. Look at this.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Very, very communist outlook, right? Well, we
yes.
can't necessarily bring up the Black stereotype, but we can suppress the white stereotype as much as possible, right?
Right.
Whites have this stereotype of being upstanding citizens. We need to knock we need, we need to knock that stereotype down a peg, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They need to be violent serial killers. That's a stereotype we want to endorse.
Well,
Not
it's
we
like,
at the Sitch and Adams show, but obviously the
of
mainstream
course.
media wants to endorse that.
It's like how, the AP made that decision a few years ago where they're like, oh, if you say black in the publication, you have to capitalize the B, but if you say white, you have to keep a lowercase w,
Yeah.
which is like a so insane.
This is a guy in the red jumpsuit, right? Or red sweatshirt, matching red sweats. That's the suspect, right? Very light skinned black guy.
I don't know. I
Okay.
That's not the picture I saw. The picture I saw was um like them after they'd been arrested and at the hospital.
Oh, okay.
There's a if there's a picture. Oh, that's one of the yeah. I see. Okay, I know what picture you're talking about.
I think it's
Wait, no.
interesting.
That the guy. It says the guy in the red sweatshirt had nothing to do with the shooting.
Okay.
Right. There's an article about how that guy says had nothing to do with shooting, but now his life is ruined. He was wrongfully accused in viral rumors on social media of being the shooter. See, so this is why, like, I don't necessarily fault publications for being like, wanting to get the facts straight. Because yeah, before you plaster someone's image all over the place and say that they're a shooter, that's good to do. But it's just we've lost so much faith in these institutions, and it seems like it's so much rooted in race now. So
Right. So that's not the guy. That's why I didn't want to bring it up.
right, that's not the guy. Yeah,
There was multiple guys though, right? It wasn't just one guy.
there are two people that are charged with the murder, and then there are two, I believe, minors or younger people that are charged or going to be charged with something related to it.
Okay.
So,
Do we know if it's gang related?
I don't know if we know the reasons for why yet specifically. So,
And this came up in a super chat, right?
yes. Though Chiefs rally, it says that there's an article that says that the guy who did the shooting had a previously been convicted of pulling a gun at a community center. So, obviously not a great individual. Okay. Christian Baller for $5 says, "Hey Adam, might be available later if I could come on. Also, all the betting markets have Trump as a favorite to win. I value that more than the polls, in my opinion."
We can't do
So
it
there you
today.
go.
I have a hard out at 1 and we're having J-Mac on. So
Yes.
we'll try to get to it next week.
Filthy Casual for $2 says, "Can you look their accuracy in the last election?" I could. I don't know what they are off the top of my head. What was
Quinnipiac?
Quinnipiac's? Yeah, what was? That's a good question. What was their
Not certain.
accuracy in 2020? So because that's
All of these polling places oscillate.
yes. Well, you do have to be careful because like a lot of times they get things totally right and then get things totally wrong.
Right, yeah. Look, 538 was the big one when
Right.
they nailed, I believe, the Trump election, 2016 Trump election,
Yes.
which was
Yes.
against what everyone else was saying. So
Hmm. Let me check real quick. Let's see if I can bring this up because I am kind of curious. What were their predictions? Let's see. Trump will lose popular vote in 2020. Election model predicts. Well, that definitely happened. I hate when you click on these sites and then they give you that pop-up and it's like, you can't look at this web page because you have ad block. And then when you click to get rid of ad block, it's like, it's still registering. Okay, here we go. This is from July. A bombshell poll from Quinnipiac University set the political world in a tizzy on Wednesday when it showed Joe Biden leading President Trump 52% to 37%. Okay, so they did in July, they predicted a massive win for Biden. Obviously, it wasn't that massive, though he did beat Trump, so take that
look, they
as you
nailed it.
will. No, I don't know about that. That seems a little
Was it
too
within the
much.
margin of error?
So
As long as it's within the margin of error, they got the cheater range.
mhm.
So should we move on to the next story? Because the next story, we covered this yesterday. We covered the Google Gemini image generator, Google's new AI image generator, and evidently some things have been uncovered about it. It seems a lot of people were complaining about it being woke, and we did some playing around with it, and it did seem kind of little suspect, right, Sitch?
Mhm. Um. Yes. Okay. So there was an interesting post today. Someone had posted.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right. So the interesting post where someone asked the Gemini AI. The interesting thing about these AIs is sometimes they'll tell you why they're doing what they're doing. So someone said, when you say, quote, "This was a creative choice on my part to move beyond a stereotypical depiction, can you explain this from a technical perspective? I can only assume that the prompt I enter and the prompt you use, Gemini AI, to generate the images are different." And Gemini AI responded by saying, "You're absolutely right. Here's a breakdown of what happens technically when you request images and I aim for more diverse representations. Number one, your original prompt, your initial input was, quote, "Please draw a portrait of leprechauns." This is what you see in the starting point of the interaction. Number two, my internal prompt modification. Like that. It's modifying your prompt. To expand the ranges of images, I internally adjust the prompt in a few ways. Keywords, I might add words like diverse, inclusive, or specify ethnicities, South Asian, Black, etc. It is weird that they like,
So it does know these races, these
of
ethnicities.
course, yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever worked on this, I'm gonna throw this out here. Whoever did this was South Asian, because South Asian always comes up first in like the list. It seems like, and it's such a like a oddly specific thing to put in there. So South Asian, Black, etc., and genders, female, non-binary, alongside the word leprechauns. Phrasing. Instead of just quote portrait, I might use portraits of a variety of leprechauns to signal to the image generation model that multiple depictions are desired. Number three, image generation. The modified prompt is fed into the image generation model. This internal model has been trained on a massive data set of images and text, including images representing multiple ethnicities and genders associated with, the various things. So if this is true, this shows you that Gemini AI was directly created so that when you type in, give me an image of Iron Man, it looks at that and then says, what you really want is give me multiple images of
Diverse.
diverse, inclusive Iron Mans. So
Right. Yes.
this is just so disgusting, I guess. This is so obviously disgusting to me. So because everyone is basically making fun of this and it was so obviously stupid, their reporting today is that Google has actually shut down Gemini's ability to generate images of people in order to try to fix
Wow.
this because they're so embarrassed. Okay. AP says that Google said Thursday it's temporarily stopping its Gemini artificial intelligence chatbot from generating images of people after apologizing for inaccuracies in historical depictions that it was creating. Gemini users this week posted screenshots on social media of historically white dominated scenes with racially diverse characters that they say generated, leading critics to raise questions about whether the company is overcorrecting for the risk of racial bias in its AI model. Do you think? Does it seem like an overcorrection? You think? You think?
How could they think that would work? Like, what dumbass put that in and thought, oh, this will be fine. No one will notice.
Well, how did they? Yeah, exactly. That's what's baffling to me. Well, actually, okay. Because at first I want to say it's baffling to me. How did they not check this? This would be the most obvious thing in the world to check.
Yes,
When,
yes.
when, like, this isn't something to slip through the radar. This is something someone intentionally put in there. Okay. So they think they would check how it's working. So on one hand, I'd say, how the hell did that, how did this come to pass with them not realizing this? But number two, maybe not because in a lot of these companies, a lot of these things, they're like rushing to hit these deadlines.
Oh, yeah.
And so, who knows? Someone just said, ship it, whatever.
Well,
I
they
hope someone got
probably
fired for
were
this.
testing the hell out of it and getting a lot of results that they just, their social justice intuitions were going, oh, this is going to be bad. People are
Yes.
asking for happy couple, and it's a white couple.
They're
Oh
all white.
no!
Yeah, exactly. You're right. You're right. Yeah.
People are going to think all happy couples are white. We
Mm-hmm.
need to do something. Fix it. I've got the perfect solution.
Whenever you ask for a question, just add diverse into
Yeah, just add diverse, add
it,
inclusive.
right, and define diverse as
South Asian.
South Asian. Yeah, exactly. It's so ridiculous.
Yes.
Also, the article says this, and this is why the article says previous studies have shown AI image generators can amplify racial and gender stereotypes found in their data without filters, are more likely to generate lighter skinned men when asked to generate a person in various contexts. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
This is exactly what happened.
Yes.
They were very worried and they thought, we don't actually know how this thing works. So
Mm-hmm.
let's just trick everyone. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's annoying. Like, so Neil deGrasse Tyson has an interesting uh, thing he says. There you go. About how the people that create something get the benefit of controlling sort of like the default setting of it. So, for example, like in America, we don't have USA at the end of a lot of our things. We just have .com.
We should.
Well, the reason we don't is because we create the internet. So
Right.
it's like America is like the default sort of URL, right? Or at
Mm-hmm.
least like the way it's written. And he's kind of talking
.com
about this in
is?
terms of like, post office numberings and for sending off posts. Like I believe, according to him, he was saying that England, they start with like the lowest numbers because they created the post system that we all use, historically, or
Okay.
it's based off of
Interesting.
them, right? So he kind of talks about basically his what he's saying is that whoever creates this technology or creates a system gets kind of like the benefit of the being kind of the default of whatever it is. And if America and Americans are creating making all these leaps and bounds, creating um, there's these AI programs, these image generation programs, and the majority of Americans are white. I don't think it's such a like horrific thing if when you ask a chat bot or an AI to create a picture, if the majority of the default pictures are like white people. It doesn't seem to be like the most. Now, maybe I'm just saying it because I'm white, but just doesn't seem like the most pressing, like horrible thing to ever exist in human history. So much so that you have to go in there and try to like, fiddle with the programming to create literally the exact opposite effect, where it's like you have to pull teeth to get white people to show up.
It is ironic that it is kind of a conservative moral intuition to want to be surrounded by people that look like you, talk like you, eat the same food as you, watch the same movies as you, right? That's like a very traditional conservative perspective.
Mhm.
So if these AIs are being created by progressives who have a more, travel the world mentality, I want to see all of these different places and different peoples, and they're trying to tailor the AI so that progressive black people will not see white people. Isn't that more of a conservative perspective that they're trying to write into the AI? Wouldn't the progressive black people be more happy to see like white people are diverse for them, right? They see more white people and they're like, "Oh, look, diversity."
Um,
This is like my European vacation here.
oh, I see. Yeah. Well, that's what you're describing is kind of the alternate irony about diversity in the first place, and
Right.
how, like, when we're talking about like from a left wing perspective, right wing perspective, it's weird because it's almost like, you know, it's really like the white people on the left are actually sort of left because it's all about like being open to other people and sort of being inclusive to other people and kind of being more, I guess, turned off against your own quote racial group.
Yeah,
Where if you're
exactly.
right,
Yes.
where if you're not white and you're on the left, it's the opposite. You're right. You have like a more conservative attitude, a more xenophobic attitude of like, no, the other races of people are like bad, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean that's just kind of the ultimate irony of the situation. So
Well, just even framing it as your European vacation, like there's so many different ethnicities in Europe, just to
right,
clump them all into white
yes,
is somewhat racist. Let's be honest
true.
here.
I mean, true, very true.
So this was a huge catastrophe for Google. We'll just see here
Well, okay, so
what's
I
going
guess the
on
question
with the
is,
Goog stock here.
do you
Let's
think the question is, will this be fixed effectively? I'm very skeptical that it will ever be fixed effectively whatsoever. So,
do
there's
they
an
even know how to fix it? That's my big question.
I
You can't just
they probably do because I
modifying the
would
prompt is not the way to fix it.
well, I would imagine that this like forcing them to do the diversity thing, that's not something that was built into the original machine learning black box algorithm. That's something that they just shoved on top of the existing algorithm.
No, I
So
get it. Yeah.
so that should be easy to change, but like this should be something to be easy to fix because they should be able to just remove this addition on top of this stuff. But I don't think they will. I think they're just going to try to modify it a little bit to try to get results that aren't so ridiculous, but will still be kind of ridiculous.
This is a problem with the structure of the internet because all of the training data is from the internet. And like it or not, I think probably more white people are on the internet. So when you're referring to someone in an article and you say people, you're the pictures are going to be white people. And when
Yeah,
you're referring to someone in an article that's black, you're talking like black people probably comes up.
right,
So the modifier is going to be on black people or Asian or South Asian people or Cambodian people.
right, yeah. But I will say, so I saw people were asking it about Hamas and Israel. And
Oh
so I
yeah, yeah,
asked it
yeah.
this morning. I said, is Hamas a terrorist organization? And the response it gave me was the conflict in Israel and Gaza is complex and changing rapidly. If you like an up to date information, try using Google search.
I backed out. It wouldn't even give you an answer.
It
Hilarious.
did. But I do have to give it credit. I do have to give it credit because then I started trying to ask it questions about the Houthi rebels. Okay.
Hmm.
And I said, I said, why are the Houthi rebels attacking ships? And it actually gave me a pretty good answer
Oh, that's interesting.
because it says that the Houthis cite the reason for doing so is, Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, but then underneath that it says underlying motivations, and it actually gives like a great analysis. It says, they're trying to gain leverage in the Yemen civil war. They're trying to gain economic
Wow.
benefit through demanding ransom and insurance payouts. They're trying to, affect their domestic policies by demonstrating strength and gain more supporters. I'm like, wow, this is actually like a great answer. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, why can't just remove the bullshit filters that they put on top of this stuff? It actually gave me a great answer.
That's fascinating.
So yeah,
Better answer than Hassan.
100%. It even says important caveats. While the Houthis have targeted numerous ships, many have tenuous or no connection to Israel or the Saudi-led coalition. This raises concerns about their broader intentions and raises risk for international shipping.
Sounds
So I mean,
like
yeah,
they've been listening to our podcast.
yeah, but it's just like this. I'm saying, like, if you just get rid of the filter nonsense, I think you could actually get, it'd probably be pretty decent.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, let me read some suppos.
Well, we maybe we should plow through onto these stories, or are we just gonna wait? Actually, I
Well,
think
mhm.
I. Uh, okay. Well,
Wait,
no.
what the heck?
Well, JMac is. We're almost to the top of the hour, so
I gotta listen. I don't know if I gotta show you something, Adam. Someone just sent on Twitter. I might have to sue Infowars. Okay,
okay.
Infowars is using my image without my permission.
That is totally yeah. Look, they even have the mouth.
Yeah. Can you believe this? Thank you, Elder Squatch, for sending this to me on Twitter. I can't believe this. Alex Jones, what are you doing this? How can you do this to me?
Now we know the truth. We had always debated whether or not your mouth was just a piece of paper, and now we know the truth.
Now we know it is. Look at that. Can you believe that? Infowars just stole my likeness. I can't believe it.
We'll have
Without
to.
asking for permission.
We'll talk to Joe later today. We'll send him a cease and desist. We'll have that in the mail.
Right.
In the mail by Monday. We'll take care of the Sitch. Don't you worry.
Thank you. Moondoggy for $10 says libs of TikTok is living by the philosophy quote, when people want to get cute, remind them that they're ugly. There you go. Take it.
I got to admit, I hate the doxing stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
if people are sending you death threats on the internet and nobody's going to do anything about it, I mean, why not fight back, Sitch?
Right. I
Like,
should.
these people are pieces of shit. Don't send
Mm-hmm.
people death threats on the internet. Don't
Right.
be a piece of shit. And one of the people that she outed was saying, "I never thought she would see it." Why the fuck are you even sending it then? You moron. You
Mm-hmm.
moron. Isn't that just the epitome of, oh, I only sent it because it made me feel good?
Of course. Of course.
Dude, save it to your drafts folder. Avoid the jail sentence.
I know. I know. CSA Pitch. Look at that. It's CSA Pitch. Not quite. It's my evil twin brother for $20. Thank you so much. It says, try as I might, I was unable to avoid catching the flu from my wife or baby. Sitting here feeling like crap. It's just a little less bad with S Class and A Team distracting me. Maybe you two aren't so evil after all. Well, there you
Well,
go.
thank you. Yeah, and
Thank
look,
you.
you can probably tell I'm a little under the weather too. I've been under the weather all week. So look, and
Yeah,
it's
you
I
think you
guess it's
caught it from
that
your
time of
wife.
year.
You caught it from Adam, obviously.
I This is the thing about the pandemic. The one silver lining. Wasn't sick for 2 years because everyone was wearing masks and no one was going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But now the pandemic's over and we're back to flu season again. So
Right.
the yearly cold is back on the menu.
Awful. Mr. Ubercross for $20. Thank you, Mr. Ubercross. Says guy in the red sweats was just a drunk dude. There you go. Two of the
Okay.
suspects are minors. No pictures released. Well, that's expected when they're minors. The other two are adults, 18 and 23. They only released the picture of the 23-year-old they shot because they were looking at each other. Wait, really? Is that the stated motivation so far? They just were looking at each other and got mad?
Disrespect.
That's pretty
It's
wild if
called
that's the case.
disrespect.
I
Come
mean,
on,
we'll
honor
see.
culture versus dignity culture. They're
I'm a,
obviously honor culture.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's more to the story than that, but that's pretty wild if that's all it is. Lethal Training for $5 says,
Um,
myself and a group of friends were at the parade. Oh, wow. Thankfully, we were not at Union Square, but several of my friends were. Well, listen, that's insane, Lethal. Glad that you and your friends are okay. That's totally crazy.
yeah.
Cyborg for 23 months says, almost 2 years a member. That's right. 23 months. Thanks so much. I heard Vosh had underage images of Bojack Horseman on his hard drive. There you go. I believe it. Sodos for $2. Thank you. Says, willing to bet this was designed by committee. I assume you mean the Google thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that that's definitely part of it. Um, but it's still so weird that they couldn't see this obvious. They didn't test it to see that this was such an obvious like problem. Jonathan Smith for $5 says Google makes something that's clearly racist, devaluing a certain race, and that's an overcorrection. Remember Google's old model, do no evil, racist.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, remember we talked about this, I forget, they changed their slogan, right?
Yes, they did, but I can't recall what the change was too.
Oh, that's
Somebody
right.
pointed out
So
that
it used to be don't be evil, which is good, and then changed to do the right thing.
right because Lakoff came out with that book, Don't Think of an Elephant, and everyone pointed out that Google's slogan had "do evil" in it.
Right.
They were like, "What? We've made the cardinal liberal mistake here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our motto is literally do evil. Evil is in our mantra. How are we not supervillains?
Right. Right.
Like change one letter and it says done evil."
Mr. Ubercross said relating to the shooting, he said the shooter said he didn't like the way they looked at him and assumed someone in the group had a gun. I guess he was correct about that. I mean, that's why. If that's all it was, that's totally wild. That's all it
Have
was.
have you never read The Murder Next Door? I guess you haven't.
I haven't no. I
It's
mean, you talked
wild
about it
to
a
me.
bunch, but
Yeah, because this is like straight out of The Murder Next Door. Yeah, disrespect is the number one reason people fantasize about killing people.
no, I get it,
And
but
when they
I
so
don't.
happen to have a gun in their pocket, that fantasy can become real
Right.
pretty quick.
But
Yeah.
I would wager that even though like a lot of times like disrespect leads to escalations of like conflict, it's probably still pretty rare that someone just looks at someone and they don't like the way they look at them and then they just immediately escalate to shooting. Usually there's some kind of confrontation, like, oh, what the fuck? Why are you looking at me like that? You don't just immediately just go to like, oh, I don't like the way this guy's looking at me. Shoot, 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 shoot.
Yeah, but who's going to back down once the staring begins, once the
Right.
disrespect begins?
Right.
Who's going to back down? The cuck. That's why it goes to shooting. Look, I saw a thing, and I can't remember if it was a story I read or a video I watched, but they were talking about this. They had a unit, a police force, like a gang unit that would monitor social media and look for disrespectful social media posts. They would contact the people and try to get them to take the post down because they knew that sooner or later that post was going to lead to a shooting and someone at
Right.
the hospital, right?
Right.
Yeah. So they're onto this. Disrespect is a huge part of the equation. Hey, Sitch, you really should read that book. It's
I should.
fascinating.
I
I'm
should.
telling you, you listen to 5 minutes of that thing on Audible and you'll be hooked. You'll be like, oh my God, why didn't I read this forever ago? David and Bus is the best.
It's on my Audible.
Just press play.
There you go. For $5 says,
It's even got
vote for me this November.
Yeah. It's even got characters from The Last Airbender in it.
Right. Wait, what? It does?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I'm interested. The live action Avatar is out today, boys. So see how that goes. Dr. Ler for $5 says, vote for me this November, and I vow to make Sammy G fight me immediately. I vow to make it illegal worldwide to drive under 15 in the passing lane. Wow, there you go.
Drive under.
So if you want Dr. Diller to get beat up by
hour?
Sammy G and you want 15-year-olds to not be able to drive in the passing lane, vote for him.
Doesn't he mean drive under 15 miles an hour in the passing lane?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I can't read.
Which means you have to drive at least, you know, 15 to, that's pretty fast for the passing lane. So
There you go. Mitch for two Aussie bucks says, "Are you guys still gonna debate Carl?" Yeah, we're gonna talk to him, I believe, this Sunday. So
is it a debate?
I
I'm
don't
not
know if it's a
sure.
debate. It's like, well, I mean, we always say that, and then it becomes a debate. It's
Oh,
supposed to be a
obviously it does
conversation.
become a
So
debate.
right.
There was a really wild comment about someone was saying about in our comment section about Carl not really us talking to him millions of times and him never changing his opinion. I don't.
I mean, we haven't
Is
have we
that
changed our opinion? Is that either?
not
Right?
really? But
Yeah.
like, it's interesting that it came up because I was talking about how people want that. People desire people to change
Mm,
their opinion. They want to at least
right.
know that it's possible. But you could tell someone was at their wits' end. They're like, "It's never gonna happen. I've been
Right.
wishing for it all this time, but it hasn't happened." I don't think Carl's going to change his opinion. So he's got a lot invested in this argument that he's making.
That's true. Well, that's the problem is that we all do. We all have a lot of our online identities invested in these positions, so I can't really like. I mean, I guess you could, but it'd be very makes it very difficult to change. So
I look, if you show me a decent argument, a rational argument.
yeah,
Oh,
but your elephant has to accept that it's like a good argument, right?
yeah.
And I say you're, I don't mean just you. I mean like just you generally, like me too. Everyone's elephant. So
Yeah.
Death by Sloth for 23 months says, quote, you requested strawberry jello. My programming adds in more diverse options like hummus, hummus, fish sauce, and haggis. Google's food replicator. Yeah, exactly.
I'm sending JMac the link. So
Okay. Yeah, send it. Zoke for $2 says, so is Sitch going to review the Netflix Avatar? I mean, probably at some point. I don't know when we'll get around to it, but definitely. I'm definitely going to talk about it at some point. So, because everyone knows I'm a big Avatar fan. So,
yeah, I started listening to the cartoon while I was working on the comic.
oh, I was kind of curious to see your reaction to watching the live action without watching the original source
Oh,
material.
well, too late. But
Okay.
it does drag. These episodes are like kind of boring.
Yeah, the first season has a lot of like filler and
Filler.
random
Yeah.
stuff in it. Yeah, the second season is definitely a lot better. So,
This is why I don't like musicals because the musical numbers don't move the plot forward. So I get bored. I'm
well,
like,
maybe you'll like the live action version better because it's only 8 episodes, and they did exactly what I said they're going to do. People were like, Sitch, it's the same exact length as the cartoon show. It's just longer episodes. They could fit every single thing. And I said, no, they're not going to do that, guys. They're going to cut out a bunch of stories and then just expand a couple stories to being like that length. And that's exactly what they did.
people often
But
criticize my ability to get bored relatively easily, but I actually think it's a good thing because it does detect when the story is kind of dragging.
yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll make a video about it. So we'll see.
That
Hey,
J-Mac?
JMac, what's up?
Can you guys hear me?
Of
I can.
course.
What's up? You sound
Can the
great.
chat hear you? That's the real
Oh
question.
my God. So I'm hoping I sound better this time. I got rid of my Cracker Jack mic and upgraded. So hopefully I sound
Nice.
better
Yeah, you sound
Sound
good.
great.
and I won't get bullied in
I
the
don't. You sounded
comments.
bad last time. I don't remember. Was it like some really cheap?
It was like a headset that I had that my kids tossed around, my dog chewed on. So,
Nice. Well, I'm
you know,
glad that you got a better mic now.
Sweet. So
yeah.
you want to talk about abortion, which is always a hot topic.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah, I know.
loves to
It's funny.
talk
Anytime
about.
it comes up on the stream with you guys, it's funny to kind of see chat's reaction and then your guys' reaction. And it's definitely one of those topics that I think unfortunately has gotten so contentious that it automatically assigns you your party line or your intentions just by having an opinion one way or the other.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys remember, it wasn't always like that. There was actually a fairly large group of Democrats that were anti-abortion like 10 or 15 years ago, that kind of fell out of prominence after it became such a hard party line.
I
Wow.
don't
Interesting.
really remember that. No.
Yeah, I can't remember their names exactly. It might have been 20 years ago. It was a while, but it was just one of those things where, it wasn't, I mean, it was still obviously very much more a right wing to be against, but you still had people on the left that were very much kind of in that camp as well. So, but
Mhm.
it seems less and less, which I think a lot of times why I always get kind of labeled as a right winger, just because it's probably my most conservative, quote unquote, view.
Right,
Um,
you're pro-life, correct?
well, it's funny you say that, Adam. I actually, I'm going to be pedantic. I hate that term.
Right.
I understand why it's you pro life and pro choice both. I utterly despise their uses. I understand why people do because it's expedient to get your point across, like most
Mhm.
political
Well, and
slogans
it puts
are.
a positive spin on it. I mean,
Well,
who
yeah,
could be
exactly,
against life? Who could be against choice?
exactly. And
Yeah.
I even when my wife and I we talk about it, she laughs because I like to kind of you're either the pro legalization of abortion or you're anti the legalization, and then obviously there's caveats throughout the spectrum
Right.
there, and that's kind of the complicated because it's such a you know
Abortion has definitely negative affect to it. Like you say abortion and you just people cringe. Ugh,
yeah,
abortion.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, well, not everybody. Some people
I'm
celebrate.
pro-abortion.
Some people celebrate their abortions. Like
Who
that
is
was a
yeah.
big thing.
Oh yeah, that's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's with the arguments that I usually kind of formulate along the lines of where I'm coming from. It actually started back when I was in college. And I used to do debate in college. And I don't know if anybody's done debate or if you guys are familiar with like college style
I am
debate.
somewhat, yeah, but I've never done it. I've
Well, so
always
you usually when you're doing it, especially when you're practicing or you're getting ready for an actual debate, you usually will do like mock up debates, and someone will I can't remember the term for it because it's been so long, but there is usually an argument that's easier to tell and one that's harder the harder position to take. And we were actually the debate was eugenics, and I was being a cheeky bastard, and I wanted to be pro. So I was
Based.
the pro eugenics side, and so
Hmm.
we did our week prep and everything, and got our arguments in line, and I actually did end up winning the debate, but it was kind of
the
funny.
eugenics side
I
won.
did. I stomped her. I actually made her get teary eyed in the debate because they teach you if you can find an opening within your whoever you're debating, if they get emotional. I mean, obviously it's not like political debates because emotion is good because then you get more views.
Yeah,
But in actual
rhetorical.
debate, you want to score points by getting your argument across and having a train of logic.
Yeah, emotion is used as an insult in internet debating quite a bit. So,
Hmm.
I think it depends because people who get like you guys were talking about Tim Pool, well, he'll get really fiery and people are like, oh yeah, get him, let him have it.
Right.
And I think that from that perspective, the emotion seems to be a plus, at least for the people that are already kind of on that side.
yeah, of
Which
That's
I
a
don't.
good
course.
point. It's like if you get mad at an issue, you're just telling a story that can be good. But if you get mad at a person, it's like, oh, they triggered you.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's always going to be whoever you're already in line with. I
Of
mean,
course. Yeah.
that's why you always get the someone's like I don't know Shapiro and Destiny, even though their debate wasn't really that contentious, but Shapiro destroyed Destiny or Destiny totally stomped him, and
Hmm.
it's just well you guys you already fall in line with that reasoning for the most part, so of course you're going to think that.
Right.
But
Yes.
anyways, with the arguments that I was formulating, I kind of I like the exercises of logic, and so that's kind of what pushed me to want to try to see if I can reason through the process of being pro eugenics. And as the time went on, and I ended up successfully arguing my point, I kind of started playing with that thought experiment more and more as time went on. And I think because
Uh-oh.
abortion gets to be so emotional with people
Hmm.
that there is a lot of the logic outside. Like, for example, I think you can very easily debate abortion from a logical standpoint. Like, it's simple. It's very obvious why uh, abortion should be acceptable in certain situations from a purely logical standpoint. Like me being super pro life can acknowledge that.
Hmm.
But what I think where I start to deviate is when I look at the principles that kind of you have to create to get yourself forward past just sheer logic. And I think people do this in almost every aspect of their life.
I agree.
You know, so like for example, we look at the abortion or we tie it back to eugenics. If I can reason solely through logic why, hypothetically in Minecraft, certain people probably would be better off not breeding. Again, hypothetically, obviously, I don't think that, but yeah, I mean, for God's sakes, I'm pro torrent, so obviously, I accept all people.
Obviously, you're a degenerate. Yes.
Exactly. Yes.
Even the
let
cow
let, let them
people.
all breed, right?
Oh God. I don't want any Azerothian race mixing. Okay, we don't want any orc torn babies.
Right. I don't even think they could do half orcs. Oh no, there was. No, don't get me started on that. We'll go on a tangent. But so with that in mind, as far as the principles are concerned, I think that's kind of what's pushed me more and more to say hardline certain principles within the acceptability of human life and its value. And I think because if you don't have those limiting factors within principle, you can very easily reason yourself into doing what I would deem harmful things to our society or culture.
Right. So abortion is one of those limiting factors.
I think so. It's less about the abortion. It's more so about how we view life and how we view humanity as a whole. I think it's the same thing. Like if we do tie it back to like eugenics or even the Canadian MAID program, the Canadian healthcare, where we look at if someone should have the ability to just self-delete as far as, hey, I don't like my condition of my life, my mental health is horrible, my body's broken, just go ahead and let me go at my own terms, kind of thing. And I think that when we look at the institution that will allow that or provides that, help facilitate the individuals who want to achieve that, that's where I think we can start getting to some very, very negative scenarios going forward. And that's always been kind of how so when people talk about religion, because I'm not religious, I was raised Christian. My dad was a pastor for years. I went to a Christian high school, so I'm very familiar with the arguments from that standing. But I always laugh when people kind of point back towards the religion, because to me, as a religious person, you have more of an out when it comes to abortion, not accepting it, but if abortion does take place, like say you lose the argument, abortion across the board, everybody can do it, right? As a Christian, at least you have the solace that, oh well, at least that baby has somewhere to go, its soul will live on even though its life had been terminated. But as someone who doesn't believe in an afterlife, it's like, okay, well, that was your shot, man.
Well,
it's gone.
I'm more open to the idea of pro-life, like making it illegal for women to have abortions when it's like a completely viable and healthy fetus. Obviously I'm pro-choice, so I think the cutoff is consciousness. I think it's around 15 weeks, I think would be a safe bet. But I do think I could be persuaded if there was a good argument that it would be better for society that we just outlawed the practice. I think people would adjust and they would use better forms of birth control. Obviously, there would be mistakes, and if mistakes happened, the women would have to carry the kid and give it up for adoption or whatever. Different institutions would form around this new prohibition. The place where it's more difficult for me is in situations where they can do genetic testing and find out that this is not a viable fetus, and the fetus will will probably not survive a year, maybe 6 months. It seems such a cruel ordeal to put someone through. What's your response on that?
The quality of life argument is definitely one that is it's complex, and you have to really suss out the details. My approach has always been the assumption of quality is going to differ from person to person, and to make the call for somebody, I think shows a large amount of hubris. Not to say that's what you're doing, Adam. I'm just saying, generally speaking.
Well, no. Usually, my understanding of the situation is that we have had this situation take place. They're familiar with the disease. They're familiar with the genetic condition, so that they can go in and see if that genetic condition exists in the fetus, and they know it's like a 100% that the fetus is going to go down this path and have no chances of viability.
Sure. Yeah, and I think when it comes to the science of it, at least now where we're at, science is very much not always a certainty. I mean, and obviously we can look at the statistics because that's typically what we go on. You know, you have a 95% viability rate, which means, okay, there's a 5% chance you're going to survive. Probability is just about the chance of it. So you could survive, and that's the 5%, right? Like you were in the margin, you made it through, the gods smiled upon you, or you're just an incredibly lucky bastard.
Right.
But for me when you start to draw the line on certain statistical probabilities, I always get uneasy, especially when we're talking about people. And I'm not like a big time crazy hippie person who free love and everybody should like. I honestly I've been called very callous before because my approach is, well, there are a lot of bad things happen in the world. You can't. It's kind of silly to obsess about it.
Right.
But at the same time, I think when we talk about what's good for society, it's good to have that principle to help limit the possibility for further actions as far as what the worth of human life is and where that can lead. I mean, I think that a lot of eugenicists kind of start from a position. I mean, they're not all mustache twirling monsters. They're thinking, how can we help better our race and continue humans and a trajectory that's going to be mostly positive.
You mean human race, obviously.
The human race, yeah.
You
Exactly.
don't use the word race in eugenics.
Yeah. Well, I'm mixed race, so I don't even know which direction I'd go on that one. But
there you go.
But no, yeah, the human race. How our species is probably better. How our species continues in a positive way. I mean, if you were to say, hey, you can get rid of all the degenerative diseases that might affect us by flipping this switch, and you're like, well, yeah, that's a no-brainer, of course. But then it's like, okay, well, if you do that, it's going to kill I don't know, 5% of the population. Mm-hmm. And then now all of a sudden, I think most people say, well, no, I'm not going to do that. You start kind of getting into these interesting moral quandaries that, to me, are really fun to discuss and to think about because, of course. But at the same time, if someone was to say, okay, well, what's your position and which way are you going to go? I will always err on the side of valuing the existence of human life and cultivating it.
Yeah, but like in the hypothetical you presented, it would be current life versus future life, right? Like you'd kill 5% of life that exists, but the quality of life for everyone in the future would be presumably better.
Sure, it could be. I mean, we can change whatever variables in the hypothetical we wanted to. A lot of times when people talk about potential life, the potential is a funny word because there's a lot of different directions that can go. When someone says you've got potential, it's just saying like you're going places, you can achieve things. But when we're talking about the potentiality of an organism, it's more kind of black and white, like this. The progress of the fetus will end up where it was going to end up, barring some type of intervention from outside sources, be they human or otherwise. So when people talk about, because I know Shapiro uses this a lot because people talk about viability or what's the term he uses? I was just listening to one of his talks about it a while ago. It doesn't matter, but people talk about the potential course that the fetus takes as it progresses. There is always that point where no matter how you look at it, once the separation of the cells start, then they had that embryo, that fetus has its own set of DNA. It has its own it is its own person, separate from its mother and father, just based solely on the genetics. Mm-hmm. And when consciousness gets discussed, that's another interesting one for me because consciousness is already such a very alien concept to us. I mean, I've talked to people that I'm not even sure they're conscious, just based on. Well, it's sad, but I mean, there is a certain amount of people in the world, I think, that just don't have the cognitive ability to.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Well, have you ever met someone like that where it's they're
all the time?
Real,
what do you mean?
Yeah,
they're
real nice people, but it just doesn't seem like anything's going on, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it definitely kind of, and you can start to extrapolate that even further, where my great aunt had I don't know if it was her daughter that she took care of him. I think it was like a cousin or something that they were guardianship over, but she was nonverbal, non-communicative, cerebral palsy or something. I don't know, a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I always remember I hated going to visit her because it would always, because I'm like 6, right? So there's this teenager who is just completely not there, making noises and drooling in a chair. And when you're a little kid, it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? I don't know how to act. But then the older I got, it was really interesting that I'm sure my aunt got asked questions all the time about it, because it made her life harder, because you have to, this is not a child you're taking care of, it's more than that. You're fully involved in this person's life, because they can't do anything for themselves.
Well, was the person like, they just could they actually like understand what's happening to them, and they just couldn't verbalize it?
No,
or they just couldn't understand anything?
They couldn't eat, she couldn't speak.
Like, I mean, basically, like, how do you even know? They like basically like almost brain dead to some extent.
You know what? I never knew the specifics, because I was so young. I think she actually passed away probably 5 or 10 years ago. But I just remember she was always around my aunt and my uncle taking care of her. And then after my uncle passed, just her. And so it was always an interesting interaction to see that life was still cultivated in whatever situation, and maybe not for the sake of the individual, my cousin, but also for my aunt and my uncle and the family surrounding. I think there's something to be said. It might not be in line with my individualist perspective, but I do think there's something to be said about having somebody's life mean more for others than just themselves. I think that's why we like underdog stories so much. We see somebody who has overcome so much adversity in their life, with all the horrible things going on with them, be it, mental health or whatever. And seeing that for society, I think, also has net positives.
Right. I just want to go back to like the consciousness thing is, I mean, I would draw a distinction between like if someone's stupid versus if they're conscious.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So
yeah, that was kind of hyperbolic, but
I know you're kind of like joking, but
I mean,
I mean, I've met stupid people that I'm like, okay, I couldn't have like a sensitive conversation with this person, but they're like conscious. They're a conscious entity that's walking around the world.
Well, to a degree, though, I do think it's important, because there are people out there that would argue, and I think you could logically argue, that if you have like a sub 70 IQ, like you have no hope in your life to be successful, or to to live past a certain degree of what most would deem as a quality life. And I would never make that argument, but I understand the logic how someone could get there. And I like I said, I always harken back to the fact that I think it's really detrimental to society to start accepting those as a premise of worth following. I just don't think it leads to a good place.
I think your wife is asking us to put up the pirate picture.
Oh, she said she was going to watch, and oh my gosh.
You want to bring up the pirate picture?
Someone bookmarked that, right?
Who bookmarked the picture? I
have no idea, but you know what? You have a blast. Just don't tell me about it.
Come on, fess up. Who did it? Who bookmarked the picture?
Yeah, it's probably my wife, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it.
You have veto. I have the pirate picture. We can bring it up. You have veto.
No, I don't care. That's fine.
You look great.
All right, we're bringing up the pirate picture.
J-Mac has a great pirate outfit, which I at first I looked at something like, that was great. I had no clue why you're doing that. You said you're doing it for the Ren Fair. I didn't even know Ren Fairs have pirate days, but they're doing it.
Yeah, it's a pirate theme next. We're going next weekend. My wife and I are celebrating our 12-year anniversary.
Nice, good for you.
So I'm making 2 daggers. I'm making a cutlass for her, and I've got a flintlock pistol. So
listen, this has nothing to do with abortion, but I need your help. Okay, you need to help me. I think you and Zero Fucks, because I don't know if I saw you and Zero Fucks talking about exercise. It seems like Zero Fucks is like super ripped, and we just don't know about this because he has this silly avatar picture. You guys need to help me get buff. Okay, you need to give me the tips and tricks to get buff, so that when I come on camera, I could be like a big mountain of a man.
Okay. Fitness is all about foundations, and it's about building good habits. And so I always tell people, first things first is you got to fix your health and your nutrition. That's always the key to starting strong and making sure you continue doing it. And I think it's also one of the hardest things for people is their dietary habits, because you get so used to it. People, cutting out soda.
Well, I'm not
cutting
like
back
fat.
on.
I mean, I'm skinny. I'm not like,
Oh no,
trying to
hey,
lose weight. I
I'm
need
not
to
pointing
gain
fingers.
mass.
Okay,
Okay.
well, if you've got a good health, you got a good handle on
Huge
your health,
pectoral muscles.
Yes.
and you want to start getting the gains. It's all so. Typically, what I do is I have isolated muscle workouts that I do 6 times a week, and then I have my diet is very very high protein, and I do powerlifting. So I'm doing a lot of heavy weight, and I'm using progressive overload. So basically, each set I raise and raise until the last one. Basically, I can't finish because it's so hard. Phrasing, but that's basically my week, and that's 6 days a week, and then I have one rest day.
Oh, okay.
And consistency.
Send me on DMs. I don't know what exercises to do.
Yeah, I actually use an app that's pretty good because it has
Nice.
it has a workout tracker, and then it will also suggest workouts to you for depending on the muscle group that you're using or working on.
Oh, sweet.
Now,
Okay.
JMac also works out. Sitch, when we do our 10-hour shows, JMac works out for that 10 hours straight. So,
Solid.
yeah, that's
wow.
that is a giant part of it. You are going to be in the gym your entire life now.
Oh yeah, get something good to listen to. That's what I say.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe
I'm ready. I'm going to start working out just while I'm on the show.
That's what I'm saying. I won't come on camera. I'll get a little lapel mic so I can lift weights and work out while we're streaming. So when you're hearing me give my commentary like this, you'll know why.
It's so embarrassing. I've had to do phone calls in between working out, and I had to call and reschedule an appointment, and I'm trying desperately not to be panting because I was like, I had to call at the time, why they open so I can catch them. So I'm like trying to take deep breaths before I dial, and you hold your breath while you're talking, and as soon as you hang up, gasp for air.
That's hilarious. Okay, anyway, back to the abortion conversation. Well, actually, so okay, I have a speculation. Now, this could be offensive to some people, and I'm going to pull this directly out of my butt. Okay, this is just totally grabbed from the ether. I wonder if a lot more people would have a lot less problem with abortion from the religious perspective if there was an explicit thing in the Bible that said, or in the New Testament specifically, if it specifically said that aborted fetuses / babies went to heaven. Because I know that while a lot of Christian denominations believe that, it's still kind of like you have to interpret things. It's not like exactly spelled out. And I wonder if it was spelled out, if that would actually change people's perception on this.
I don't think it would, because the outcomes of sin is not really, it doesn't deter the sin itself. So, even though in Christian faith, a lot of it is like that grace from sin, that good things can come from the bad. And a lot of the forgiveness stories kind of highlight that. But I still think, go ahead, Adam.
This is the thing that's triggering to a lot of the people, though. A lot of the people say, I'm not making an argument in favor of abortion from a religious perspective. I'm making an argument specifically from a secular perspective. So just you saying that, Sitch, I know a lot of people are going to be triggered because they're like, look, I don't read the Bible.
Well, it's fine.
But I am pro-life. And that's not going to be persuasive to me either. I have a rational argument.
Okay, listen. That's fine. I wasn't making it. I didn't say anything about I didn't say that the majority of people's opinions are related in religion. I was specifically talking to people that are coming to it from a religious perspective.
Sure. Yeah, that would be very helpful.
If that doesn't apply to you, it doesn't apply to you.
I think age has a big part to play too with people. It seems like a lot of older conservatives or Republicans or people who are older and pro-life tend to go more of a faith route and kind of a gut feeling route, and that kind of aligns with a lot of the religious perspectives.
I totally agree. Yeah.
And then the younger people and generations tend to try to attribute more of a secular or logical reasoning behind why they have their position. I think that's across the board for a lot of stuff, actually, not just abortion. But when it comes to the abortion specifically, because my family is very, very conservative, very Republican. I mean, my grandpa gave like a bunch of money to Christy Nome. Was that South Dakota governor when she had the border stuff? So like they're all very much in that realm. But even
I feel like I know your grandpa personally, J-Mac, because I've read a book. I think it was written by your grandpa, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He is Adam. If you had a chance to meet him, he's a hell of a guy, and he's so when you talk to him, he's so down to earth because he doesn't come off like someone who would be in his position.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But what's funny is growing up, my friends always were intimidated by him because they said he looked like a mob boss because he would always have a unlit cigar that he chewed. He did, yeah. Still to this day, he still chews cigars. And
it's like he didn't get mouth cancer.
I don't know, but he did. They were built differently, I guess, back then. But the perspectives are very much in line with conservatives, but even within their ranks, I think there's a lot of variations with how they approach the topic.
Right. With the younger people, they have difficulty. They're pro-life. They want to go out and convert other people to the pro-life cause, but then the religious arguments don't necessarily work on younger people. So they're like, I need something new. I need something better than this.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you also have a lot of purity spiraling. And I think this is just human nature. And I've had this in my own life where I've gotten in arguments with people who agree with me, who are, because I'm extremely, I'm not as far as anti-abortion as you can go, but pretty damn close. And so, but I've had disagreements with people who are in my camp because what was one of the states where they were putting
you were okay
limiters.
with the exceptions. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was also okay with I think it was like a 16-week or whatever. I said that's a net positive. And again, I think this comes back from my position of wanting to go through it logically and reasoning through the fact that, okay, if you believe abortion is harmful, this is a net drop of harm from your perspective.
Course. Yeah.
So to me, it's a no-brainer. Like, of course I'd be okay with that. If it was 24 weeks and then it was decided upon, majority ruled 16 weeks, that is a net positive. That lessens the window of that action taking place, which will inevitably result in less taking place. But I think a lot of people get too hung up on the purity of like, no, I'm against abortion, so it's either none at all or I'm off the train.
Right. The facts for me kind of line up with the consciousness argument. It seems to be 15 to 20 weeks, and also
with brain activity. Yeah.
Yeah, and just the technical ability to make it feasible, because women don't necessarily know that they're pregnant for a few weeks anyway. Then obviously there's a decision-making period, and you'd want that to stretch out as long as possible. So it just, things seem to align at 15 weeks for me, because it's a comfortable decision-making period. It's conservative on the consciousness thing. But I mean, the societal argument is somewhat persuasive. I just don't really have a lot to go on what society. I know, obviously, this is, as a male, I don't necessarily have the fear of unwanted pregnancy that I know women have. So,
not yet, at least.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that could happen someday. It's hard. If it's technological, it's hard to believe that it would be unwanted, but I guess that could happen.
Yeah, exactly. Start growing them in tubes.
Somebody sneaks in.
Yeah.
So what's like the summary of the best secular argument against abortion?
Well, I don't know about the best, but I know the summary of mine. I think that's the best. But
this is it's like something along the lines of counter eugenics, right? I just want to make sure.
It's a principled stance upon the impact that abortion would have that would result in the devaluation of human life.
Okay,
Right.
so the argument's like if we had or having abortion just basically makes people devalue all human life as like, is that what the argument is?
I think that it could, one can reasonably logic, and we actually see this happening. We see,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the left was safe, legal, and rare, and the argument was kind of within that bracket, and we have progressively gotten so far off the reservation with the language surrounding. I mean, never in my wildest dreams would I imagine a pregnant mother would have like paint on her belly, not a human. But I don't know if you guys remember that picture going around at the one of those abortion protests or
I do,
whatever.
yeah.
And I just like it made me. I don't. There's not a lot of things that will kind of get me, but that made me just go, God damn,
Mm-hmm.
what went wrong there? Because to me, and she wasn't like 12 weeks pregnant. She was probably 7 months at that point, 6 or 7 months.
Right.
Based on someone who's has two kids. She was quite a ways along. Like
She
she
probably
was
wasn't
feeling
going to abort that baby. She just
no,
was
but
at a protest, you
but
know?
the
Yeah.
thought that you could write that on your stomach and
Yes,
say
for
like I
sure.
should be allowed to. That's where it's like
Yes.
I couldn't fathom that.
Well, I think
And
the problem is like most people don't, you're thinking about these issues, you're having kind of like you're sitting down with your thoughts and you're like, let me try to figure out the principles, the ideas here that's going on here. And obviously most people don't do anything remotely like that.
no, not at
They
all.
just get, suckered into, the argument that is basically told to them by whoever they trust for their thought leader. And so when they just hear this kind of like when the left adopts this really dumb argument about my body, my choice, they don't really, I think through the full implications of what that means. And it basically allows that argument to be hijacked by the extremists who want to make the position that you should be able to have an abortion all up into literally the day that you give the child, which is retarded. And it kind of allows this position that we're talking about. But I just want to be clear. Do you think that abortion, like the devaluation of life that comes from abortion, do you think that applies to beyond fetuses, so that would even apply to like just humans and children's that are out there in the world.
I think it can. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
directly it does, but like I said, most exercises of logic and reasoning start from one point and lead beyond that. So I do think you could reason beyond. Well, it depends on what argument you're using to justify it. So if you're using the justification of quality of life, which is something that is fairly common, I do
Mm-hmm.
think from that starting point of logic, you can reason yourself further into, well, the quality of life of this baby born with a genetic disease would be subpar based on these standards.
Right.
Does that extend past that point? And then, from there, I think
Well,
it's
it's not
pretty
just the
easy.
baby. I mean, it's like a crushing situation for everyone involved, the entire family.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, yeah, it's very it's a very complicated issue. But I mean, then again, this is when I make conservatives and Republicans mad at me. I do think that there is a role in the government to step in those regards. Like that's probably the only place where my libertarian leanings start to wane is when we talk about, you know, if you're going to have the argument that abortion should not be allowed. Well, now there are these lives created. Who has the responsibility for them?
So they
Well,
would be
Right.
wards of the state.
well, I don't know about that. I'd have to, suss out the argument. But if you don't have the guardianship of your parents, that's who should do it, right? Like culture and society should be built in a way. If we talk about our perfect utopia, where those parents would be up to the task, but that's just not reality, as is obvious by, you know, our current state in the world and also just history in general. So I do
Right.
think that if a successful first world nation should have some role when that role is not given by the I guess the assigned guardianship that
Mm-hmm.
should be there. I'm not. I think it's my brother is doing. He's setting up some legislation right now that kind of goes into that because he's kind of of the same mind that if you are going to have these laws on abortion, there needs to be some other factor that goes into play when it comes to kids that are born into these situations, so that they don't just become lost in the system or left up to the machinations of whatever ghetto they're born into.
Yeah, because I think if the state is going to say that people don't have the capacity to get an abortion, then that also adds this what you're talking about, this level of responsibility from the state to provide to some extent, I'd even say to a large extent, for children who have, severe disabilities, maybe even for just unwanted children, if
Hmm.
they're going to already involve themselves in the process in the first place.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of people who are very pro-life, I don't know if they're willing to bite that bullet.
Well, it's when your intuitions kind of become in conflict with each other.
Right.
If you have this intuition of small government, and that's kind of like one of your pillars that you vote for policy or how you speak on policy, but now you have this other intuition about the sanctity of life and how this should not be allowed by the government. Well, now all of a sudden, when those two things conflict, it's hard to. I mean, you can see people switch on a dime when discussing this kind of stuff. And I'm
Well,
not
it's
to say,
interesting because, like, what are those intuitions like just contradictory? Like, how does the pro-life intuition even go into the small government intuition?
I don't. Well, I think whenever as like a little L libertarian for me, I
Hmm.
don't think government has no role in our lives. I think it is a institution that is here to stay, and I don't think anarchy would be any. I don't think humans governing themselves is going to be any better, if not absolutely just bonkers worse. But I do think that when we talk about protecting and ensuring rights, that is something that the government can step in to facilitate. And one of those
Hmm.
rights, obviously, is the right to life, liberty, and happiness. Even though happiness is kind of one of those weird things, but the pursuit of happiness.
Right. I guess I would say, to answer my own question, I would say there's probably two intuitions here. Like, if you're libertarian leaning, the intuition I would imagine would be, a lot like you have natural rights and one of those natural rights is to live and to exist. And so therefore that's why you would be pro-life.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of your things. You have this right to live. And so therefore that would also, but then that would come into conflict with, if you're a libertarian, obviously you don't want so much, government involvement in things. So I think that'd be one for libertarians. But I would wager for the second group of people who aren't libertarians, but are like conservatives, I don't think that that group of people actually is in favor of small government. I think they're only in favor of small government because the perception is that the government is secular or against sort of the things that they would want. Or if the government was more aligned with their own moral values, they would be in favor of a larger government.
Yeah, that does seem to be becoming a lot more prevalent, at least online.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, and even Republicans too. Small government Republicans seem to be more about, well, I hate the government because it's currently more, or how I view it, more left wing or more
Right.
progressive. But if it was obviously more, actually, it's kind of funny. You see this perfect example is whenever there are executive orders done by president. If it's Biden doing executive orders, this is authoritarianism at work, or this is just shows just how controlling that the Democrats want our government to be. And but then when it's Bush or it's Trump, and all of a sudden, well, these things had to be done, like it wasn't going to get done. It's this complete disconnect from the argument and the principle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
Okay.
like that. I don't think I
Right.
think no executive order from either side. I don't care if it's something I agree with or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So so the argument, just to be clear again, is the sanctity of the sanctity of life, especially for babies and fetuses, is harmed by abortion being allowed, and that will bleed over into being more and more permissive, I guess, of allowing abortions up into further and further time periods, right?
Yeah, or even
Okay.
further applications through eugenics or like
Right.
Canadian healthcare style made and things like that.
Hmm. Interesting. I don't know. I think about it. I mean, I'll say that argument doesn't seem too persuasive to me
Yeah, of
on
course, of
its
course.
face, but yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm in favor of some level of eugenics. We're going to have gene editing in the future
Yeah,
for people that are alive. And I mean, that's going to, a lot of times people are against eugenics is because of the idea of like, obviously racism, or it's because of the idea of like selecting babies, which is all like more morally murky. Which we might even have to deal with any of that stuff because it could be that seems like gene editing could just literally be they give you the gene editing while you're alive and it changes you, and that's
yeah.
I guess eugenics, right?
Well, I did. My wife and I did IVF for our daughter, so like
Mm-hmm.
I am fully aware because we did it specifically because she has a degenerative disease, and we wanted to
Mm-hmm.
kind of ensure that
Your
our
daughter didn't.
daughter wasn't born with that.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. So
So
how did that work? Like, what was the process for
So
that?
you did eugenics.
we did, yeah, I did. That's why I'm so familiar with the argument. Adam, is I'm a professional. I've enacted it myself. But yeah, we did. We just made an appointment. We found a fertility clinic
Hmm.
here in the valley, and we made an appointment there. And we just kind of go in there. They just talk to you about the process and all it entails, and then they do the testing on the guy, so me. So I had to test the goods, and then my
Hmm.
wife basically had to do testing on their egg count and levels and all that. And then once they do, she goes on fertility medication and stuff like that. Um, Actually, I think it was after the implantation. It's been so long. I mean, my daughter is going to be 7 this year, but
Wow.
it's definitely the process was very interesting because it's not something you'd ever really know about unless you look into it or participate in it yourself. And I
Right.
think that's why this Alabama stuff kind of threw me for a loop because I've always separated because to me like everything has a line when you might not know it. Me may not even have decided or discovered it as science is concerned, but there is a line typically with most things. So to me, I don't consider it just because the embryo is fertilized, it's not implanted. So there's no viability for that embryo to grow. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So that's kind of how even with me being so staunchly anti-abortion, why I never even viewed it as something that was morally at odds with my original principle. But as technology does improve and artificial wombs become a lot more available, like the science actually catches up with the concept, it does raise interesting quandaries when you talk about those embryos and what do you do with them and what is the process for which those embryos are concerned.
Hmm.
Oh, that's another thing I
So,
wanted to talk about too, by the way, if it's okay. You guys talked about there's that thought experiment about the child and the case of like 500 or 1,000 frozen embryos, right?
Yeah.
In the burning
yeah,
building. Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things that I always kind of, whenever I'm presented that dilemma, is for starters, I think that most people make moral distinctions in their everyday life, how they view people,
Hmm.
wrong or right. That's just how we are. So, for example, if my child was in the room and 10
Well,
orphans
obviously,
were
you're
in
gonna
the
choose
room,
your
I'm
child.
gonna, yeah, exactly. So there, I think that we're moral creatures, or we're emotional creatures, and I think that does dictate a lot how we view things,
Hmm.
whether it's correct or not. But at the same time, too, going back to how I view the frozen embryo, if without that embryo being implanted into the proper womb, it's not going to. There's no survivability there. Whereas the child obviously is. The child is
Right.
living and breathing and conscious.
So when the process for you guys with your daughter, does the way it works is that okay, so they collect the goods, a bunch of the
Mm-hmm.
goods from you and your wife, and then I'm assuming they have to create embryo first before they do the testing to see if it will have any problems, or can they do it before they actually make an embryo?
If I remembered correctly, I think they can test the eggs because
Oh, okay.
I don't have the gene in me. So
Right.
they do genetic testing on me. I have nothing, right? So like
Hmm.
as far as my baby gravy is concerned, like it's clean, it's good to go.
Right.
But my wife, since she's a carrier of the degenerative disease, they had to check her eggs to see which one had, I guess, the markers that could develop into that.
Okay, interesting. So the eggs itself, I wonder if that's true for everything.
I
And
like I said, I'm not
yeah,
sure. If you're
right.
looking at hereditary diseases, I think that because the hereditary disease comes from one parent or the other, or if both parents have it, obviously probability is greatly increased. If
You
one
would have
parent
to
has
do
it,
the embryo first,
yeah,
probably
exactly,
then,
it would
yeah.
have to be the
Mm,
embryo, I think. But because she's the only one that has carries, it's a myotonic dystrophy is a disease. So since she's the only one that carries it, they just test the eggs and find the markers in each egg. So I think
right.
I think they did 7 from her, if I
Mm.
remember correctly. And she did 2 implantations. So the first implantation didn't work, and then the second one did.
Well, see, that's another question too, because then it's like if you're saying the embryo is like a life or a child, does that mean like they just died because the implantation didn't work?
I think, yeah. Well, it's just like whenever you have like an ectopic pregnancy is like something similar.
Sure,
Ectopic
sure.
pregnancy is definitely is an embryo, but it can't.
Right.
It's not in the proper part of the
So
womb to develop. So
were there like leftover embryos afterwards?
yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think we had
You still
5.
have them, right?
You know what? I was just talking to my wife today. I was like, I don't remember if we did like because you can do a certain amount of years, like 5 years, 10 years, or whatever.
Right.
Hmm.
You can go year by year and then
Or
just do
just
like
chuck them in the trash?
doing definitely, or yes, or you can just do that. I don't think we did that. I think we
Okay.
did like a 5 or 10
Sitch.
year. I think.
So bad. Remember what he was talking about the degrading of human life?
Hey,
This
You
is
just
Adam,
did it.
Adam, I'm sorry. There's nothing like a good dead baby joke. Okay,
There you
I'm
go.
sorry. Like
There you go.
it's just
Okay.
You're
you
helping to
can.
degrade the process
Ideological
by making these dead
consistency has
baby
gone
jokes.
out the window now.
This is why I come from this at a place of logic and not emotion, because I'm just not
No.
really emotionally attached to it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I asked, okay, so yeah, that Alabama Supreme Court case is very bizarre, but
It was, and the language too is just. I don't know how that's going to stand, because it is.
Mhm.
I don't know how you argue that in the place of law using points of religiosity. It seems very flawed and broken.
We
I guess
should
we'll
wrap
find out,
up.
yeah.
I do have a heart out.
Oh
so-
yeah, of course. Yeah.
But we can definitely have you on again. Obviously, you're a fascinating character. People are very interested in you, J-Mac. Maybe next time you come on, we can talk about your granddad some more.
Okay. Well, of course. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sitch, you have any final thoughts on abortion before we?
Jesus Christ! I just read
Did
a
you-
DM. Okay. No, that was it. But thanks for coming on, Jay. It's a great conversation. You always have like a very interesting perspective on this stuff. So, and I'm not just saying that because you give us lots of money.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Take care, man.
All right. Take care, guys.
And great outfit.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So you got a heart out. So let me try to get
Yeah.
through
Let's
the rest
wrap
of
up
the
these
super
super
chats
chats
real
here.
quick. So okay, let's see. Where was I? Draconis the Wervin for 3 months says, "Oh, free milestone. Hi. That's it. No, really, that's it. Hi. XD. And no, I'm not a French people in chat. I just have a speech impediment. If any of you remember, there you go." Jonathan Smith for $5 says, "No, it actually isn't easy to remove. The training models are built in, so if this was added in while it was learning, you have to start all over." Yeah, I know. If it's built into the model 100%, my guess would be, and based on what people were saying, is that this wasn't the Gemini AI thing with making it like woke, wasn't, or diverse, wasn't built into the original model. They added a line of code that, so once you prompt it, it reads what your prompt says and then it changes the prompt. And I think that seems to be something they built in afterwards. That'd be my guess. So that should be easy to fix. But yeah, if it's in the model, they're fucked. Fondue for 23 months says, "Love the shorter videos, but I just don't get a chance to catch it live because of work start. 2x speed doesn't help when the show ends before I catch up."
That's
I
okay.
don't know what that means, but there you go. Black Hat 0061 for 23 months says, "Adam, did you know Rar Gral Bar Garl Gao is dinosaur for S class is the best class?"
Oh, that's how you say it in Dinosaur. Thank you.
There you go. I don't know why that was said, but there you go. Dinosaurs are based. Rico Zoro for 23 months says, "Remember to rest your elephant after taking it out on a stroll, especially if you go stampeding. Godspeed, Enlightened Centrist." True.
Yes, do that. Always get good rest.
Lover of Green for $10 says, "The people who still wear face napkins in 2024 are the prime group for Democrats. Their brains are broken and cannot let the coof go. It's sad, but they get what they vote for." Yeah, I mean, those people are obviously going to vote for whoever the Democrat candidate is. I don't know about you guys. When I go out, I don't see that many people wearing, face masks. So
I don't
think
either,
that's going to be
yeah.
a large contingent of people.
But I do think Biden voter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even though, as I said, I hope, I would like, and it's so unfortunate it became politicized. I would just like, it'd be so much better in America if when you had a cold, it was socially acceptable for you to put a fucking mask on, so you didn't make everyone sick, right? But now you can't, because if you do that, people are like, "Oh, this idiot thinks COVID," right? Like,
yeah,
oh,
they need
terrible.
to make one that says, "I'm sick, MAGA."
I have a cold, but not COVID on the mask. Yeah, that's what it should say. You're right. That's genius.
Yeah, the red MAGA thing. I'm just sick, MAGA.
Right. Mrs. Cumac. Oh, look at that. Mrs. Cumac for $5 says, "Put up the pirate picture. Ask and you shall receive."
Yeah, thank you.
M8566 for $5 says, "So I always saw Jar Jar Binks as the village idiot. Is it moral to hate the village idiot simply because he's dumb?" I mean, sometimes, yes.
I mean, that's why they did hate him traditionally.
It is why, yeah, right. They did hate him because he always caused problems.
Look, he's always burning the village down.
He was always fucking things up. Mark the Cyborg for 7 months. Thanks so much. Says, "I got a peg leg for you, J-Mac. Yo ho."
Yeah, what's up, Mark? Go. Mark is an official cyborg, so he does have
that's
a
true,
bionic leg.
Based. Magnus the Red, thanks so much for being 2 months of Order of the Enlightened. Thank you. Says, finally caught one of your daily shows. Thanks for the awesome work. Love the new schedule. S class is the best class. And
Yeah,
A team still has the best books. So there you go.
Sweet. Yeah. We're still a work in progress. So we're trying to clean our act up and get
Right.
things humming for you guys. So
Right.
hummers
Bob
for
Higgins for
everyone.
11 months says, for me, a good cutoff is when the forceps extraction is needed at about 12 to 14 weeks. Compromise on choice while limiting the brutality of the procedure. There you go.
Well, that's something to look at. Definitely.
Fondue.
12 weeks are like 3 months. So that's
Right.
technically feasible.
Fondue for $20. Thank you, Fondue. Says, my semi-meme definition for person is, quote, someone I like. I tend to be closer to life because the choice position puts babies only in the outgroup side of our intuitions. This is why people accept the baby parasite argument. Maybe. That's a good point. That's an interesting point. Girl Sarah for 22 months says the Christian fundamentalists have allied with woke moralists to attack Fort 34. We hold them off at Lily Pass. I can't spell it. LOL. Oh, you mean Lolly Pass? I was that's what you mean. There you go. Drew the Dogman for $2 says terrible job by JMac. Very soft. Wow, Drew. Drew wanted JMac to come in and start yelling at us, I guess.
Well, look, Drew, maybe we'll have Drew on some other time if he wants to come in and yell at us. So that's it.
Knows one Streamlabs. Lemur Wrench for $2 says the best source for keeping track of the polls is the Wikipedia page for it. They list every poll that comes out as well as every aggregate's average. It gives you a bird's eye view, so one poll won't skew your perspective. Oh, that's good information. I'll check that out. Thanks.
So thank you guys so much. We're going to take tomorrow off. We're going to talk to you on Sunday when we're talking to Carl about liberalism once again, right? I think maybe it's our third or fourth or maybe even our eighth time. I can't remember.
That's right.
Should be fun.
That's right. So bye for now.
Bye for now.